This is the walkthrough for the scope of training plan. When I was discussing the executive summary walkthrough, I had mentioned that there's a document that's bigger than the executive summary, but still far less than the content. This is that document. The simple explanation of what the scope of training plan is everything that you've created in the design phase of your training project. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. You'll notice at the top that the document has a lot of the same information that you've had in other documents, like the executive summary. You have the project title, the purpose of the training, the expected results from the training, and a due date of when you plan on first deploying it. You also have a date written. This is important for making sure that you can keep track of versions and revisions that might be made to the document as it's shared with stakeholders who need to know. Going a little deeper on the document, you have training specifics. Training specifics, you'll notice, has a title of training program. That's if this project is part of a larger training concept or curriculum. For instance, you can have training within a basic new employee training that would apply to other segments of the business, but it might be part of a larger program of basic training. So this project might be one component of what would be in basic training, but you need to make sure that it's organized and warehoused in the right places. The next thing is the audience. Who is it that's going to be impacted by this training? The different modalities that you would use for determining how the training is going to be delivered, assumed classroom size, and the assumptions that you were given at the beginning of this project during your discovery. Next, we go directly into stakeholders. We need to know everyone who needs to see the scope of training plan, and everyone who looks at it needs to know who else is contributing to this training product. And then we get into lesson breakdown. Lesson breakdown is very important because you're going to cover various things depending on how big this training is. Now, one thing to note, that this is level 1, level 2 in details. This is not Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation, but instead it's the highest area that you're going to be addressing. For instance, if this is part of a program and there are multiple courses within this project, then level 1 would be the name of a course. If the project and the program itself is just a course, then level 1 might be your terminal performance objectives. Again, for level 2, if it's part of a greater course, this is where your terminal performance objectives would be. But if it's a course in and of itself, this could be your enabling performance objectives. And then you have an area where you can put in any kind of explanations you might need, such as this is going to be strictly e-learning, this is going to be instructor-led training, or any kind of important logistics that might be involved in this section. And then you have details. This is an overview of the topics that you'll be addressing. This could be things that you might need, people you might need, or specific characteristics of delivering that specific item. And then we have an area where you can put in information for like benchmarks, expected due dates, or assignments that you've made where you have expectations of people delivering certain parts. So as you progress through this, either listing the course and the TPOs or the TPOs and EPOs, you just fill this out. For every section, you're going to have all this information. Now, you might not have priorities within this part. You can delete that. But there should be details, enough information that if somebody wanted a deeper dive but without actually going into the content, they would be able to get a good idea of how this training is progressing and what it's covering just from the scope of training. The next part we go into is the evaluation plan. Now, we're not going directly into a measurement plan because we're only talking about the course itself. We've already provided details. We've already provided TPOs and EPOs possibly in the lesson breakdown. So what this does is it just shows that we have a plan for measuring the efficacy of the course itself. And since we're using learning transfer evaluation model, we can break out the different ways that we're hitting each one of those tiers. Once we've filled in the information for the evaluation of the course, we get into resources. This might be subject matter experts. It could be links to other training, could be academic papers, whatever resource you're planning on using for developing out this training, you're going to list it here. Again, this is an overview of the training and not necessarily the methodology of the training, just the materials and showing that you have all bases covered. The next thing we cover, timelines and milestones. For any of the stakeholders who are going to be looking at the scope of training plan, anything from your C-suite down to your managers or supervisors or other stakeholders for this training development, they're going to want to know when things are going to be done, what things are going to be done, and by whom. And if you have to give more explanation about what the item is, if it's not immediately transparent, you can put it in a description. One of the big things to do with this is the change log. The change log is super important because if you have a large number of stakeholders who might not know a particular business unit, they do need to know the particulars of their section, but they also need to keep track of what's changed in the program. So here you list your change log, the materials, and what business unit it impacts. For instance, the name of this first change is the first edition of training. If you found out that you were doing a Tier 1 tech support training and something changed on how servers are being administered, you might have to put that in there. Or if another business unit like marketing decides that they're going to sell something that needs to be part of the training, then you put this added marketing component to training. And then finally, approvals. Again, I'll say it over and over. Always send this out for approval. In the email, ask for commentary by a specific time. And if it's not provided, that's tacit approval that they accept everything that's in this document so that you can move on and make your deadlines.